Welcome back to the Fantasy Sports Trade Association Conference right here in New York City. First time ever in New York City, as they didn't think the fantasy sports industry was big enough to go to New York City, and I guess people showed up in a big way.
Largest group of attendees ever in the history of the Fantasy Sports Trade Association.
It's pretty good when you're looking at all that's happening in New York City, and of course the excitement with Fantasy Football 2015 just around the corner. Last night, of course, kicked it off, our first, I guess, unofficial draft or official draft?
I think it's official draft, yeah.
Not for the B-League guys, not until you get a name.
I guess.
B-League doesn't cut it for me.
Let's welcome our guest, Dustin Gouker from the Legal Sports Report. I got that right?
Yep.
All right,
for having me.
Thanks, dude. I'm so sorry we kept pushing you back. Come back in 10 minutes, please.
No worries.
I actually reached out to you guys because I read your website. I only discovered a couple weeks ago, and it's so thorough and so interesting, and you're so on top of everything. Thank you. It's an awesome website.
Yeah, thanks. We've been, I think it launched last fall. I've been a part of it since about January. We track legislation, legal issues, pretty much everybody in the space, not just FanDuel and DraftKings. We kind of go down the list and try to make sure everybody's represented. Content sites, smaller tier sites, and try to get industry news on all of them. So,
could you give us a quick take on what you think the top stories are going to be coming out of here? I know we've been talking about the new number of the 56.8 million. Huge number for participation. But is there some other stuff we might have, because we've been out here and we just getting texts and little alerts. What do you think you're going to be reporting on in the next coming days?
Yeah, the numbers are going to be one thing. I mean, there's a ton of numbers. They'll have the numbers up there on FSTA's website, so anybody can go look at them. I'll do a story probably breaking them down and seeing what do these numbers mean for fantasy. But that's the big one. But beyond that, I thought there was a panel about TV, talking with CBS, WGN, and ESPN. And they were saying, and ESPN was that part was really interesting. They were talking about how they're looking to integrate fantasy more and more into their actual broadcast, not separating fantasy out, having fantasy as an integrated part of all of their sports content. So you're going to see Matthew Berry, who's in there presenting right now for the Shark Cage. He's going to be on their Sunday morning, just along with all their other guys. He's going to be doing fantasy stuff on the Sunday show. So that's kind of cool. And the ESPN stuff was really interesting. I have to go back and kind of re-listen to everything they said, but it was you're going to see a lot more fantasy on ESPN come this fall, I think.
Oh God, transcribing. That's the worst part, man.
No, not transcribing. Listening, live tweeting. That's all I'm doing today.
Nice.
It's interesting, and we have such a site dedicated to the fantasy sports industry. We talked this morning. We talked about the Arizona situation and not allowed fantasy sports. Do you guys garner and do you guys track the traction to try to get those, I believe, 7 states in the United States that daily fantasy sports currently is not legal?
Yeah, it's most places think it's 5. I think most of the FanDuel and DraftKings don't operate in 5 states. And yeah, we have actually a tracker. If you're curious about what's going on in a state, we have a bill tracker. If there's an active piece of legislation, you can click on there and say, what's going on with this bill? And I'll write a story if there's something going on. But Arizona was interesting. That was new to me, because they don't have a bill failed last year. There was no active work in Arizona this year. But it was kind of interesting to me that they're making a push there. They apparently think they have some traction. So I would expect to see next legislative session, Arizona will look at legalizing fantasy sports. I don't think they would have said that if they didn't think they had a pretty good chance of getting it through the legislature there. So,
Dustin, I want to make sure we properly plug everything. LegalSportsReport.com.
That's right.
And you said you got a podcast too, right?
Yeah, State of DFS on Rotocurve. We do every couple of weeks.
With Rathburn, right?
Yeah, Rathburn.
Yeah.
So I think Rathburn was on earlier, maybe.
All right. No, I don't know. At this point, I have no idea.
Yeah, he was on early this morning, the 6 to 9 a.m. portion with Adam Ronis and Scott Engel, but Adam Ronis was not in this morning. Greg Sussman.
Yeah, he bailed. He got out of that one pretty nicely.
So if you really love the industry stuff, it's the 3 of us, me and Jason, also at Rotocurve, talking for half an hour, 45 minutes about all the issues from the past 2 weeks. So expanded version of this, just talking about all the issues.
Dude, I'm embarrassed that I haven't been reading this site more, because I'm serious. It's not, you see these sites about the industry kind of pop up from time to time, and they're not clumsily thrown together, but yours it's just so thorough and dedicated, and you can tell you guys know what you're talking about. There's a great story up about how right now, everyone's, FanDuel's so much bigger than DraftKings. Mm-hmm. But right now, you guys use all kinds of metrics to figure out that thanks to golf and more people playing baseball on DraftKings, actually right now at this moment, DraftKings is a little bit bigger than FanDuel.
Yeah, there's a case for that. I mean, there's they're both private companies. We don't know all of the metrics that both of them have, but based on what we know at this snapshot in time, discounting the fact that football, is in a few months. Like right now, with everything that DraftKings has done, between their marketing, between all these other sports that they run that FanDuel doesn't. FanDuel's only in baseball right now. Like, you can't play any other contest at FanDuel right now, but you can play NASCAR, golf, soccer, all these other things at DraftKings. Yeah, there's a case that the metrics say right now they're bigger. Obviously the big golf contest, they had $2.5 million given out this weekend. They're going to give out $3 million for the British Open, and yeah, there's a good case. There's also a good case that FanDuel, once NFL season rolls around, will be back on top. They have partnerships with half of the NFL teams, which I think is a big deal. You're going to see FanDuel, even if they don't have a sponsorship with the TV or the NFL overarching, you're going to see FanDuel in the background a lot, I think, in these stadiums. Or if you're at the stadium, you're going to see FanDuel plastered over half these NFL stadiums. So that's going to be a big deal.
It's interesting where you see a DraftKings or FanDuel basically going everywhere they can to try to get sponsorships with these big leagues. The NFL has chosen, as far as I know, not to partner with DraftKings or FanDuel because they want them both involved. What's your aspect of that, and how do you think that's going to shape out?
Yeah, the NFL, as we all know, is very cautious pretty much in everything. They don't want to tie themselves to something, that might resemble gambling. That's a big taboo for them. They're going to take their time. They're going to go through legal. They're going to see how the industry shakes out, and then I think they'll make their move. I could see them partnering with one or both of them down in the future. There's Chris Grove, also at Legal Sports Report, wrote recently that he thinks the end game for DFS could eventually, we're talking down the road, but the leagues could be owning these sites. That makes a lot of sense for them. They can operate the sites at either a loss or break-even proposition, and they benefit from the fan engagement. That's which is what DFS is. At its core, it's engaging fans, and the leagues obviously have a vested interest. 3 of the major 4 North American leagues have equity stakes in FanDuel or DraftKings. So.
Let me ask you, because you had a study on who's number 3. It's kind of been a theme I read in a couple of the posts. Mm-hmm. Fantasy Aces, there's Fantasy Feud. There are a bunch of, I guess, contenders for number 3.
Sure.
What do you think one of the companies has to do to claim that number 3 spot? And when someone does, do you think they'll run away with it? Or do you think it'll be 3, 4, 5, and 6 kind of bunched together?
That's where it's been. When I did that series of stories, kind of just a couple months ago, everything changes so fast in DFS. It's that's almost dated now. I'd say I didn't even write about Fantasy Feud back then. I'd say if I had to pick one right now, it's going to be Fantasy Feud. They've got this $500,000 online final for baseball. I think they're going to be the first out of all the sites that are kind of in that tier. They're gonna. I bet they'd offer a 7-figure guarantee come football season for week 1. I think maybe other ones could, but I think Fantasy Feud is right there right now. Victiv is a really interesting one. I think a lot of the speculation industry right now is they might be linked to Amaya/PokerStars. With all these other moves, with these other sites that might make sense for Amaya, which are Draft Day, Fantasy Aces, Fantasy Feud, and that kind of second tier behind FanDuel and DraftKings. Victiv might make most sense. They also have a CEO who's linked to the poker world. He came from PokerStrategy.com. I don't know anything on the record or for sure, but it's something that makes sense. And if Victiv, either as a standalone product or as part of the PokerStars product, could be a big deal in the fantasy space right away. So.
Absolutely. I want to ask you about one of the sites that has not gone well, and I think there were some expectations for it. Fantasy Score, which is part of USA Today, people see a newspaper like USA Today and thought they would do well, and it has not gone well from a user standpoint. What happened there?
I'm not sure. I haven't dug into Fantasy Score a whole lot, but I think the moral of the story is the barrier to entry. People have always said barrier to entry for DFS products kind of low, but I don't think it's that low anymore. I think it's a little hard. It's easy to roll out a product. To gain any kind of traction, you have to either have some really smart people, put a lot of work into it. And I think that's these sites that are separating themselves. Fantasy Aces, those guys work really hard. They built it from the ground up. I think going back to 2012 maybe. They really kind of put a lot of work into it, a lot of time. They're personally invested in it, and they just didn't expect to say, "Oh, we're going to open a fantasy site and succeed." There's so many sites that you don't even know that they just went away. They just disappear. You never heard of them, or they just never gain any traction. So,
I believe the first 6 DFS sites all collapsed. They all didn't make it. The very first 6 that ever came into the market.
Yeah, there's not many left from FanDuel and Fantasy Feud, at this point is one of the. I think there were only 3 or 4 operating when they started back in 2012. I think I might have misspoke. I think Fantasy is a little newer than that, but yeah, Fantasy Feud is right now one of the originals, is along with FanDuel as far as people who are still in the market, and Draft Day obviously still around too on their different owner. But.
So again, going back to reading your site and just like Tony, I was just clicking through every single story. The fantasy e-gaming market is one of the most interesting things to me. I think it was
fascinating. Yeah, absolutely fascinating.
Holy crap, man! Like I think it was Vulcan.
Yeah, There's 2 that are kind of similarly sized right now: the Vulcan and Alpha Draft. Yeah.
And I think it was like Vulcan just got 50 million in funding or something. Or I
don't think it was 50 million. I think the round we reported, I think it was 12 million.
But Dustin, it was something million.
Oh yeah.
Right? Like
yeah.
It's a fantasy league based on based on gaming.
Yeah, League of Legends, Counter-Strike. I don't play these games either, but there are millions and millions of people who both play them and just watch them. Either they'll go to arenas and fill them up.
This is crazy.
Yeah,
this is the craziest thing.
Yeah.
I never believed it. I don't play video games. I know nothing about it. I went to Boston, Massachusetts to a convention with my son. I took him, and my son was like starstruck by video gamers that he watches on TV. Like, he doesn't play. He's on TV watching these guys on Cinch. I guess a broadcast network.
Twitch, too.
Twitch,
yes.
That's it. Twitch is a broadcast network, and now they have these fantasy leagues for these guys. It's amazing what's going on here, and I think it's going to be a huge hit.
It's an amazing market. Yeah, I mean, these guys are professional. They're called professional athletes. These guys make a lot of money. The guys who play the games make a lot of money. So somebody figured out, hey, we got all these people watching this. Let's do DFS for esports. So. Yeah, it's the same idea. They have like these competitions where a bunch of teams playing video games play each other. You pick a fantasy team, you see how they perform, you can watch them on Twitch, and then they pay out a fantasy contest. Vulcan's amazing. I wrote the first story. That's one of the first stories I wrote at Legal Sports Report was about Vulcan. They originally said $250,000 in prizes through the entire year. That's what we're going to offer, which is that sounds amazing for a startup like that's coming out of nothing. Now, $10 million this year, and it's going to get bigger. $10 million in prizes. I mean, we're not talking FanDuel, DraftKings, but we're talking $250,000 to $10 million in prizes in the space of several months.
Is there content? Like, is there some? If we want to just play Vulcan for a couple weeks, is there somewhere we could go to read like, here are your Vulcan picks for this week? I mean, I'm sure that
I haven't drilled into the content stuff. Like Vulcan has some strategy. I'm sure there is strategy. You can go to I bet you can go to the video game forums and find stuff. The other cool thing that they have that is, I'm sure like DFS sites are looking into is you can watch the Twitch feed right on the site. You go to Vulcan, there's one tab, here's where you enter the contest and watch your scoring. Another tab, here's the actual live stream of the contest, and you watch it right there on the site. It's I think that's where probably DFS sites would like to go, and especially on a mobile app too.
Well, FanDuel, I believe, has a show on Twitch. It's not incorporated on their site yet, but that could be somewhere they go in the future. It'll be interesting to see that.
Well, like Yahoo's going to be streaming an NFL game, and we think Yahoo is theoretically going to have a DFS product for the NFL season. Yahoo, here, you can watch the game. Here, you can play fantasy sports. I think that's where, to a certain extent, I think a lot of places would like to go that way.
It's unbelievable. You're going to be busy in the next year or two.
Yeah, absolutely. It's crazy. I started out as a little slow, and then all of a sudden news just every day. So there's never going to be a shortage of news in this space right now.
Yahoo coming into this mix. DraftKings, FanDuel, they've got a head start. But Yahoo's got all these users that they play all the various sports in a big company. Do they make immediate impact?
I talk to a lot of people. I bring up Yahoo pretty much with everybody I talk to, just to see what sticks to the wall, see what they say. I talked to I think it's Daily MVP's CEO used to be a head of fantasy for Yahoo. He thinks they're going to compete day one out of the gate with DraftKings and FanDuel. Other people not so sure that Yahoo is going to be like right there at the beginning. But they have advantages that FanDuel, DraftKings, and all these other sites don't. They have the users. They have Yahoo. They can just advertise whenever they want. They could serve you up daily fantasy ads all the time. They have these season-long players. They say, hey, look here, you play daily fantasy. Real easy. It's a real easy conversion as opposed to getting somebody a first-time sign-up at DraftKings or FanDuel or any other DFS site. So
this is amazing, man. Dude, genuinely, I really like the site a lot, man.
Thanks. Appreciate
Legal Sports Report. Please check it out. Dustin, thank you again, man.
Yeah, thanks.
I know you want to see who wins the Shark Tank, right?
Yeah.
That's like the best one, and we kept you from it.
No worries. No problem.
We're taping it, so if you need anything.
All right, good deal.
Dustin, thanks. So LegalSportsReport.com. Check it out. It's really excellent stuff for the industry. We'll be back with more FSTA coverage after this.